Quick, Juliana, I don't want you to feel like it's against you, but I am going to try and enforce a certain time limit. So I'm going to give you another minute to finish up your point.
Okay, on the other side, on the African American side, I believe that at this point we need to have conversations about what we have in common, where we can join one another. In the event where you are fighting for maybe reparations or other issues that's going on in America. um, so far the conversation has been laced in what seems to be hate and rejection of Africans involvement at times, like Omari was saying, Africans' involvement or who you consider non-black, even if it's true or not. Sometimes the conversation has been laced in hatred or rejection of them getting involved in helping you fight your struggle, right? Adding to your numbers on that side. It's been laced with kind of hate and rejection. And then almost this perspective of, oh, you're gonna reduce our number of, you're gonna reduce our portion of what we're getting. The perspective, the idea from an African side or from my perspective has not been me trying to put my hand out to get part of your blessings, has just been let me help out in the way that I can, right? And then me hustle on my own life and trying to better my life. The last thing I wanted to mention, please forgive me, Phil, um, Armani, Armani, Armani,
Armani.
Armani. I'm sorry, Armani. When Africans, and not to say this is you're not wanting to know, when immigrants come into this country, a lot of times they are really going through it. Americans' perspective of travel is totally different from what other immigrants' perspective of travel is. Americans' perspective of travel is like luxury and all that kind of stuff. A lot of immigrants, I would say a good 80% of immigrants who's coming to this country and other countries, because America is not the only country that we're coming to. Okay, a lot of us go through crazy ass situations you will not believe. I know that's not your problem. I know you don't give a shit about that. That's fine. But I'm just saying, please don't see it as this luxurious experience where they're well traveled. Girl, well traveled is not the issue here. Survival is what they're coming from, and they're not even asking for much. They're just simply asking for whatever crumbs fall down the table, and as much as they can, survive. So I'm just saying, let's not please let's come together and find a way that we can focus on the bigger issue here, and not be fighting one another over what the white man believes is supreme. That's all I
And
want to say.
and Juliana, just
Thank
quickly,
you.
I didn't say specifically that. Obviously, I understand travel comes from different places. I was only speaking from a Black American perspective because most Black Americans have not traveled outside the United States, and some have never even been on a plane. So I was just speaking to that. I don't have the time to get into a whole dissertation on everything on why someone comes or doesn't come and all of the ways in which and the methods of travel.
All
Thank
right, so
you,
we're going to move
Juliana.
on
That
to
was good.
Liz.
Liz, and then Domo, Nikki.
Hi everyone. Well, first I want to thank Phil, Armani, Trin, and Letitia for just like like sharing your African American experience. For the past 7 years, I would say I've been like on a journey trying to, like really better understand the plight of Black Americans because as a first gen American, and I feel like the the African and Caribbean community, we have to be honest about this. Like we were taught things about Black Americans that haven't been true. Like from how like they're into drugs and prostitution. There's been sort of like we've already been told even before we enter those communities what Black Americans are about. And I've literally had to like retrain my brain. And I kind of discovered the exact opposite. Like, yes, there is crime in communities, but there's this kind of like thing that Black Americans are like inherently evil. So like you stay away from them. And we can't really unbox that without talking about white supremacy because that is something that white the dominant society has kind of like put in our heads as a way for us not to be together when we do come to this country. Like we aren't really solidified with our Black American brothers and sisters because of those like preconceived notions. So, I know like there has been questions about like, well, what can we do to support you guys? And I think that every single Black person, African Caribbean, we have to be 100% on board with Black Americans wanting or demanding reparations. Like, that is the first step. Like, we can deal with our cultural issues after, but I think if we want to show like real solidarity, that is something that we have to go hard for them for, even though this is for them. This is a debt that is owed to them, and we have to be like completely for it. So anytime they bring that up, it's like absolutely we're on board. It cannot be the, well, what about us? Well, what about Haitian Americans? What about this one? It has to be African Americans that they are owed a debt, and all of us, every single Black person is on board with them getting their reparations, what is owed to them. That is the way we show support. And I think that you'll see that our relationship will kind of ease up, the tensions will ease up if we kind of are on board with the one thing that they are really fighting for. I have personally seen Africans and people from the Caribbean going against that. Like, no, Black Americans don't need reparations. All we have to do is kind of like put our, spend differently. That is good and all, but they are owed a debt, and I feel like they have not been able to flourish and reach the heights that they have because that repair that is owed to them has not been fulfilled, and that is one step that we can all do here. There should be no like, they don't deserve this. They absolutely, it's not even a deserve, they are owed. So the things like, yes, we could work on, well, like, well, you guys say this about me. That's fine. We could have
Liz,
these
I'm gonna give you
cultural
about another
conversations.
20 seconds or
Yep,
so.
we could have these cultural conversations, but I think the first step is the reparations aspect. They need to be repaired, and every single person should be on board with that. Period. Thank you.
Liz,
Thank you,
just a
Liz.
quick
That was
one. You know the UK haven't been paid reparation as well, right?
So the thing is that there's actually projects where people are working to get reparations for people from the Caribbean and from Africa. But because we are here in this country, this has to be the goal that
I know,
we work
I
on.
understand, but it's not just about America, and that's the thing where I have a problem with Black Americans. It's always centered around them. There's so much struggle outside of the US. We
This
haven't
is
had
their
reparations in
country.
the
Quite
UK.
frankly, Sandy, I don't think that that's fair to say that we Black Americans can't be focused on the struggles here. I'm not
No,
saying that
I'm
we can't
saying
have
that
solidarity towards the
it's,
reparation movement in the
no, she had
UK,
said, can I
but
speak? Can I speak? She
Sandy,
said,
it wasn't your turn to speak, so no.
no,
I,
just
I
quickly, I
allowed.
haven't spoken on this
Peace
thing. I've literally
out.
not spoken for hours. Like,
Sandy actually hasn't spoken. She deserves to actually speak.
okay,
No, no,
well,
Let's
no.
look,
I
see.
agree. I
they're
was
cutting
going to
me. They're
put her
cutting
next in
another
the queue
UK
after
person
Liz
again.
got done
Right.
speaking because she
I've
was
been
in and out
hearing
of the
it.
room, so
Phil,
she
you've
got
been
out of the
cutting
order.
people. You've been cutting people. So I'm
Oh,
used
is
to
that,
it.
well, let Sandy go because I keep seeing her in here and like it gets skipped over and she wants to answer to Liz and I want to hear what she actually has to say to
Yeah,
her.
me too.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Sorry. I've got something in my mouth. I'll pass. Someone can go before me.
Okay, then we'll move on to Damo.
Hey guys, I've been in the room for a little while and I've heard everybody.
I
Get
think
this
we
diverse.
lost her.
Can y'all hear me? Can y'all
We
hear
can
Yeah,
me?
we
hear you.
can.
I
Yes,
can
we
hear
can hear
you.
you now.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So I said I'm a Black American, but I've had the privilege of growing up in a ethnically mixed Black ass family. So I got family from Guyana, I got family from Trinidad, I got family from Brazil, I got family from all over that have come like that have been in our family for generations, for years. So I've been able to see everything from different perspectives, and I think in these conversations, and I know this is not the point of the room title, but I think we should begin focusing on the points of unity and cultural exchange within our diaspora. We tend to arrive at these conversations from a place of like divisiveness. Even when we claim we're not playing the oppression Olympics, it tends to come back up where we have these cyclical conversations. I mean, if we do that, I know it's a point. I don't want to erase anybody's pain or anybody's struggles, But when we continue to do that, we continue this cycle of continuing these conversations, and then we'll be in the same place 2 hours from now, still focusing on the divisiveness, still focusing on our communities being so different when there's so much that unites us and there's so much that makes us so similar. And if we could switch the narrative to that, like explaining our pain and explaining our issues, but then talking about, you know what, I did have this moment of cultural exchange. I did have this moment of cultural unity with a Black American or with someone from another country where I got to see from their perspective, I got to see their side. I think that's happened a few times, but that hasn't happened enough for this conversation to go in a way that is um, knowledgeable for everyone in the room and for people to leave like, okay, I got a better understanding of this person's perspective. That's all I wanted to.
I agree with that. I think again, Omari started the room, and I think he had to leave, and that's kind of given the topic. But for me, when I joined, I was hoping that would be kind of the direction of the room as well. So thank you for that, and I wholeheartedly agree. All right, gonna move
I
on to
would
Nate,
add
then
one
Laura.
thing real quick. I think that we all like the reparations conversation, Sandy. I just thought about this real quick. Don't you think that if we were fighting, if people were uniting around the struggle of Black American descendants of slaves to get reparations here, that wouldn't reverberate everywhere, given how global and the global power, superpower of the United States is, that wouldn't
That's such
reverberate everywhere else?
a
That's
Western
way too
concept. That's not,
Americanized. I'm so
yes,
sorry.
that's
I'm
too
just
See,
asking a
racist.
this is
question.
what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah. Armani, I'm
Strange.
sorry. And Sandy, I hear you. I think that there's importance in addressing that conversation in the American context and also in other European nations that have that like enslaved people. I agree with you. And I do think that we do oftentimes have Americana lenses. I hear all of that. Um, but also to Juliana and Liz's point, or especially Liz's point about the reparations conversation in the US. I think that is very important. But I hear what you're saying on a global context because Americans do have such an Americanized view of the world for whatever reason that is. That's not an excuse, but an explanation. Um, I can see how it can be frustrating when it feels like the conversation of reparations is only centered on Black Americans.
And I
Kieran,
just
and
don't think it's
just to finish up what you were saying, it's so bad in the UK that they paid reparations to the slave owners,
Oh, they
the
did that
slave
here too,
masters.
girl.
You understand what I'm saying? So
They did
when
that here
everyone's
too.
saying American this, American, yeah, American is not, America is not the the highlight of this world. There's so many things that's going on around this world. It could be, 9 out of 10, we have supported Americans on the struggle. I can never kind of doubt what kind of struggle that Americans have gone through. But like on a wider scale, we need to kind of find some kind of unity and meet in the middle, and not kind of say, well, we went through more issues than you don't know that because you've never been in the UK. You've never been in, a lot of people haven't even been to Africa yet. We're still struggling from the colonization. And I'm an African, I'm Nigerian in precise. We're still struggling with colonization, the residue of colonization. We've only been independent for 60 years. So we're all going, the Black struggle is universal. It's not just America. And one thing, I go to America quite often, like literally 4 to 5 times a year, and education is lacking. You know what I mean? Even when I go there, I have a lot of Americans say to me, oh, I didn't know Black people, lived in the UK. Wow. That, you know what I mean? So education, I feel that I'm going to be honest. I feel that a lot of Americans, they're just in their bubble. You know what I mean? They don't, not all Americans, but what I've seen, they don't educate themselves outside of the US, and
and
there's
to
no
Real
defend,
excuse.
quick,
but
Sandy,
Sandy,
because
to defend
we
Americans.
want to move on. I do want to touch on that real quick because I think there is that idea, and I think it's a valid thought of that Black Americans do not recognize or see very much outside of the world unless you've had the privilege of being able to travel and do those different things. There are so many issues that are underlying in that it would be way too much to get into. I don't disagree. I don't want you to have the idea that should be blamed per se on those specific people because we can't have this conversation without talking about the systematic things that have led to that dearth of information about other countries and
But
other
Phil, there's the
ethnicities and
internet.
different things
And
as
Black
well.
There's the
Americans
Yes, I
internet.
often
agree. There
don't.
is the internet, and
It's not
I'm telling you
fair.
that I understand, but I am telling you there are nuances in that conversation, and it's just a much deeper conversation that we're
Sandy, I just
having.
don't think you're being
hold
fair. That you're being fair to the fact that most Black Americans are not even taught really about their own history that well, and just having a computer. Um, there's, I mean, if we know about what's going on in COVID, a lot of Black kids in rural areas didn't even have computers and still don't have computers and are not even able to do their schoolwork now just because of COVID. So don't say just because the internet. I mean, there's a rural divide with Wi-Fi and broadband access where a lot of Black people live in rural communities in the South. They don't even have access to internet. So don't say that, well, okay, Black people, we have the internet, we have an iPhone, so we should just know everything about everywhere else. It doesn't work like that. It's
yeah.
more
Well,
nuanced.
education, there's books, and there's the internet. It's
Well,
not
Well,
and guess
just
what?
Sandy, I'm
Okay,
so
okay.
Everybody
I
can
don't
sorry.
want
talk
to get
about it.
Sorry, can
sidetracked
I
from the
just
main
point out
conversation.
that you
If
interrupted
you
her
speak
straight
out of
away?
turn
This is
again,
why
we're just
people
gonna
think
move you from
moderating
the
is.
stage. I'm telling you this. I'm just making that as a warning. I don't want anyone to feel like that. We want the conversation to keep moving. So thank you for that, Sandy. I think Nate was next, and then Laura.
Hey y'all. I've been in this group and seen it nearly triple now. So at this point it's a privilege to even speak. So yay me. But I just I don't want to repeat some of the good points that some people have said. I think a lot of people have made really good points. I don't necessarily like some of the points that I wanted to say, but at this point, I kind of see the conversation like converging to this, and hope that at least part of it can be addressed before I leave or before people leave, because some people have been here again since it was only like I joined when it was like seven people. But at this point, I'm interested in hearing about what people think we can do. Like, what is the action item? Like, what do we want? Like, I think to synthesize some of what I've heard over the past um, hour or 2 hours, I don't know how long it's been, but like we've talked about the question of like, okay, like the question in the header, like why does this seem to be the case? We've talked about like education, we've talked about lack thereof, and the resource allocation point was really spot on too. And I do think that this is a very good first step. Like unity comes by way of having these conversations and identifying the problems. And claps to Omari for starting the conversation. And I'm kind of disappointed that he left because I wanted to like acknowledge again.
He's back in the room.
Oh, great. Yeah. So, like, Omari, I know that, like, I just want to say, like, I think part of the essence of advancement is doing the best we can to, and I know we've talked about the word nuance a lot, like, everyone's not the same, everyone's nuanced, everyone's experience is nuanced. I think that even though you were in that conversation and you were treated the way you were treated and you were kicked out, it, I acknowledge the hurt and how that must have felt. But believe it or not, what they've done, I think I'd like to believe that is, that's like, that's part of the, it's a step in the right direction. Even though you were quote unquote the enemy, or you were the victim in that situation, I think that that experience, if the conversation or the circle of change circles back, and they end up in a conversation and get enlightened, they're going to remember that experience. So at this point, I just want, and I know Phil, you've been moderating, and I don't want to jack up the flow of everything. So if people want to touch on this as we continue to go on the order, just so like I can put things in my back pocket as I go through the week, like what are some things that like we can actually do, slash what do we want? Because I think that if we identify like what you want, and then look at the common denominator across everybody, like if we can have focused change one step at a time. Because I agree with some of what people have saying in terms of like the cyclical conversations, and it is valid. It can sometimes be exhausting to reminisce and remember and recount trauma and oppression and the experience thereof. But I think it's a necessary first step, and I'd love to hear about what people think in terms of like what some feasible actions like people could do. Like there's over 200 people in this group. Like that's powerful. Like this platform, like this is it, y'all. Like we're here.
Thank you for that, Nate. And I 100% agree. And if anybody has a direct response to Nate, we will allow like that as we go through the room. But I am going to try and stay in the order. So we're going to go to Laura and